did you know goldenrod makes an excellent tea?
Happy birthday to me. Happy birthday, dear Aaron.
Me.
You are a sad, strange little man, and you have my pity.
Hey everybody, welcome back to Tomic's veteran of the comic book industry for 30 years. I'm a writer, I'm an artist, and this sucks.
Tonight's episode, Death Watch.
Don't start! We haven't left yet!
Let's go indeed. Welcome everybody. It is time once again for Aaron Live. We're running a little bit late today because I had to take my kid to the airport. Someday I'm hoping, praying that she will get her driver's license. But of course, if she had it, I'd still have to take her to the airport. But anyway, so we got a little bit of a slower start, a little later start tonight, but it's going to be an epic show as we have a very special guest tonight, which we'll get to in just one moment. But let me first say hello to all you guys joining me in the chat. NPC Oasis says he's first, and you know what? You're right. And you know what you get for that? Nothing. But thank you for joining me. We appreciate your participation. Toshiro's here. Mark Pengren. He says John Malin drew 2 issues of New Warriors that Kevin wrote. How about that? We'll have to ask him about that. Dan the Pizza Man Genovese is here. George LaCour says, you know who Aaron's favorite X-Men are? Wolverines. Of course, he's referring to the Michigan Wolverines blowing out my Huskers 45-7 this weekend. And all I can say to that, George, is this. So there you go. That's what you get for being a smart aleck. Randy Howell, all the way from Canada, is here. Hey, Shelley's in the chat. Stippling Vaughn is here. H for Heretic. Marcus Killigrew, knowledge of all things pop culture, is here with us. Geek Avenger, Squibs, Collector Express. Custom God is here. Howdy, Aaron. Are you going to the Frankenstein comic swap next week? Maybe. If next week is this weekend, I'm going to be in Houston at a show, so no. But if it's the following weekend, probably. Kellraiser's here. He says he's not first, and I will confirm that. Ruby Jade 90 is here. Creative Faye, thanks for joining us, Creative. Jake Blues, Joseph Pantalon. Well, I know what a pantaloon is, like pants, right? So I don't know what a pantalon is. Collector Express is here. David Williams is in the chat. He says, Kevin, no N-bombs with the hard R. I think Kevin's laughing backstage at that one. All right. Heat Miser's here as well. Tex Zombie. Hey, you guys. Thanks for joining us. And if you wouldn't mind, hit the like and subscribe so we can grow this channel, so I can continue to bring on epic guests like I'm about to bring on right now. Oh, Christina Lynn's here. Thanks you for joining us. Coth the Raven, Lewis Braven is here also. Okay. It's not very often that I get to say my guest today is a movie star, a writer, a director, a producer, and a comic book fan, all rolled into one large package. Boy, I probably shouldn't have said that. Anyway, will you guys put your hands together and welcome my special guest, Kevin Grevioux. Hey, Kevin.
How you guys doing? How you doing, man? How you doing,
Aaron? Great. And I'm glad that you were able to come on the show. I don't usually have big name guests on my show because I'm too lazy to book them. But
I don't know how big name I am now.
Fate drew us together. So thank you for joining me. I really appreciate it. Okay. Everybody probably knows you best for your roles in the Underworld movies, right? Underworld, and of course, you were back in Rise of the Lycans. Now, when you put this together, this is your creation, right?
Yes, yeah, I wrote the original screenplay, came up with the original idea.
Now, I want to go back in a minute and talk about how you got into film, but I'm curious about the Underworld thing because I know it's not easy having your own project and then trying to get it sold in Hollywood. Can you talk a little bit about how you put that thing together and how you're able to get the movie made?
Well, it really happened because of Lynn Wiseman. Lynn was the linchpin. He'd been directing music videos, and he was with ICM. That was it ICM? Yeah, ICM, which was one of the big agencies at the time. And he had a meeting with Dimension Films. And like I said, Lynn and I have been friends for a while. I met him on the set of, I think it was Stargate. And he was a prop assistant. And I was just an extra soldier. In fact, if you look at I think it's the director's cut, I was a soldier who stood up straight and saluted Kurt Russell when he went in and looked at the Anubis fossil on the wall.
Mm-hmm.
So Lynn thought I was a somebody, and I wasn't. I was just an extra. And so we found that we liked the same kind of movies, bad horror, bad science fiction or whatever. And we struck up a friendship. So years later, after keeping in contact all this time, he had a meeting with Dimension Films, and they wanted to do a werewolf movie because
Is David calling you too? I'm sorry. Is David Williams calling you? Because he's calling me too. I didn't want to interrupt your story.
I know I had to put him on send him a voicemail. So
oh man. Okay, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Yeah. So what happened? Dimension, like I mentioned, they wanted to do a werewolf movie because Blade had done so well for the vampire genre. So Lynn calls me up and he's like, well, what do you think? And I was like, well, not much. And the reason behind that is because, werewolves really aren't very sexy, if I could say that.
Yeah.
Like looking at the old days, the hair is matted. You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
Not everyone got the design, got a cool design, things of that nature. And so, my only concern was, really non-negotiable that we do, if we do this, we do a bipedal snout-nosed creature. And the first time I saw that was The Howling. And to be honest, there were only like 2 or 3 werewolf movies that were any good, which was The Howling, American Werewolf in London, and if you want to go back to the Wolfman movie from Universal, or maybe The Werewolf of London, if you want to bring that in, because that preceded.
My favorite.
Yeah. So there was that. So I came up with an idea that he liked. And so we were going to go with that one. So we met, talked about it, banged out the story. And then I said, well, wait a minute now. We have to have more than one idea. Because if we don't, or if they don't like it, then where are we? And this might be our only chance in. So he just shrugged his shoulders like, well, I don't have anything. And I said, well, I've been thinking. And I said, what if we did a Romeo and Juliet story? But instead of Montagues and Capulets, we have werewolves on one side, but vampires on the other. And make it like this surrealistic interracial star-crossed love story that spanned a centuries-old race war between the two. And to be quite honest, he just folded his arms and looked at his feet and was like, I don't know, is it going to work? He's been quoted other places as saying he thought it was the worst idea he'd ever heard. Here we are. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Here we are. And that's how it all started. So, so I wrote the original screenplay, and they brought in another writer. You know how Hollywood is.
Yeah.
And, we got that bad boy up and running. But looking at it, what bothers me in retrospect, since your show is really a comic book show, do you know it is easier to get into the film industry where there's infinitely more money than the comic book industry where there's relatively little money? Well, there's more now that there's crowdfunding, but prior to that, it's like, my goodness.
It's silly because I remember I used to teach a class back in the 90s, an extension class, and I would get these through art college, and then I would get high school students, and I once wrote down on the chalkboard, I said, I want you guys, before you think about this as a career, and I went and said, you know how many slots there are in the NBA for basketball players? And it was like, I took the teams, I remember it was like 460 some or 430 some. And I said, you know how many titles Marvel and DC publish a month? And it was like, at the time it was maybe like 60 between the two of them,
Yeah.
And I said, so you have a better chance of making it in the NBA than you do as a comic book artist. So if you're okay with that, let's proceed. So it is crazy how tight knit, because there's always been, to a certain degree, independent film avenues to get in,
Yes.
but there really hasn't been. And there's been, like in the 80s, there was some independence in comics, and of course they all died out. Image was a special thing, but for the most part, it's been Marvel and DC having this very gate-kept community and very small community, and it was very, very difficult to get in.
Yeah, it's very incestuous. I remember, one writer friend of mine, he was telling me the comic book industry is still way too small. If you make one person mad at you, or they have a bug up be in their bonnet for some reason, about you, then you could not work anywhere,
It gets around fast.
Yeah, exactly. So it makes it difficult. And, was that Bible verse, many are called, few are chosen.
Yeah.
The way it works. And
the rewards aren't quite as good in comics as they are in Christianity.
Exactly.
David Williams was trying to call us and disrupt the show to both of us right up. But this is what he has to say. Kevin should do the audiobook of the Bible. There you go.
Well, I would want people to listen to the Bible. If I do it, they'd be like,
All right. So we had a conversation. Well, actually, we first met. I don't know if you remember or not. I think we first met and talked at WonderCon in Anaheim. This would have been pre-COVID. Because I remember you came up to me with your book and wanted me to do a sketch in your book. And it took me a minute until you started talking, and I realized who you were, when I heard the voice. And we got to chat a little bit. I think that was right as Trump had just got elected. So we had a nice kind of interesting conversation about Christianity and politics and all that kind of stuff. So it was, I think it was the first time we met, but you recently, we had a phone conversation, and you told me that you went to, and I read this in your bio. That's the only problem I have with having guests on. I have to do homework. But so you actually, well, okay, let me start this way. You told me in the green room before we came in that you started reading comics about what, 1975?
Yes.
What
that
first?
that didn't mean I didn't have any comics before, but it wasn't a hobby of mine. I think we grew up in an era where by the time you were 10, all boys, had a couple of comic books around.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? But it wasn't until, I guess 75 when I met this friend of mine who got me into comics. And it was a completely new world to me. Because prior to that, I was into models. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
and
Oh,
collecting models, prehistoric scenes, the
mhm,
Universal models,
mhm.
and Hot Wheels. And those were my hobbies before. And when I discovered comic books, a whole new world opened up to me. And it was really exciting, very exciting.
Now you told me that was it your grandfather you said bought you a couple books?
Yeah, my
What was
grandfather and my grandfather bought my brothers and I these treasury editions, and the treasury editions I got were the Fantastic Four and the Hulk. And I don't know why Marvel abandoned them or abandoned the concept, but those things did a lot for me in terms of a real introduction to the characters and to the world of Marvel, because it was kind of like an anthology, and it had, several stories in them, including origin, little origin bits. And it was, like I said, the Hulk and the Fantastic Four, and to this day, those are my favorite characters, the Fantastic Four especially. And so, that's what
that?
got me started.
Those are the things that those first books will stick with you, and
Yes.
it's interesting. My first comics were we were on a family vacation, and we back then we used to drive to go places. We never, flying was completely out of the question, and so we would stop at a grocery stores or whatever, and my mom let me get two comics, to keep me busy reading in the back seat, and it was I was young too. I think I was 7 years old. It was like FF 112, the Hulk versus Thing with the black cover, the Buscema cover, where they're
Yeah.
facing off. And then Amazing Adventures #7, which had Black Bolt versus Thor with the Neil Adams cover, and Neil Adams did the interiors.
Yes.
And I was too young at that point to actually start, buying them on my own. But it was probably 73 or 74 where I first actually maybe went into like a 7-Eleven or something and laid down the dollar to get my four comics for, four
All
for a
those.
dollar back in the good old days. And
Yeah.
I think the very first book, I was wrong. I used to think it was a Spider-Man book that I got, but I found issue 7 of Frankenstein, which was dated 1973, which is the earliest book I remember buying on my own. And it's so
Right.
typical of me buying a monster book. And you're a monster guy too, obviously.
Yeah.
Um, let me ask you this real quick. There was some things I'm going to kind of bounce back and forth between film and comics, and then we'll
Yes.
talk about your project you got coming up. But let me. I was looking at your bio and your list of credits, and for the boxing fans, if there are any in the audience, I saw you were in Don King Only in America, and you played Leon Spinks.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Now, I was a huge boxing fan in the 70s and early 80s. And
Right.
of course, I remember this 1976 Olympic team that was just, had Sugar Ray Leonard and the Spinks brothers and Tate. I can't remember his first name. That was the heavyweight. It was just what an amazing group of boxers, and we were able to kind of follow them throughout their career. But I was like, oh my gosh, he played Leon Spinks. Now, was that kind of just like a cameo type role? Did you have, because I remember when that movie came out, or it was advertising for it on TV, but I never watched it. So how big was Leon Spink's part in this film?
It wasn't big at all. Basically, what happened? It was a stunt job,
Hmm.
and a lot of times, as an actor, you're able to supplement your acting work with stunt work if you're a somewhat physical guy. You know what I'm
Hmm.
saying? So I had the build and the look for certain heavy roles,
Right.
and I just got a call out of the blue, to play Leon Spinks in this Don King movie. And so I went down, met the stunt coordinator. I think his name was Chuck Pacherny, and was hired on the spot. Did it, and that was it. Didn't have any lines really.
Did
Just
you
just the choreography. Um,
did you
that I had.
fight Ali in the movie? I mean, did they have any of that?
Yeah. I think it was Darius McQuarrie or McCary. Yeah, I can't remember the actor's name. But he did a tremendous job doing, playing Ali. And I was just in a room with him, going over some, fight moves or whatever. It was very stylized from what I
Yeah.
remember.
Did you have any boxing experience, or did you have to like get some training for that?
None whatsoever. I had to get some boxing training, and yeah. So I mean, it got me on a path of hitting the heavy bag. Like I have a heavy bag in the garage, that I used to try to keep in some semblance of shape, things like that. But no, I had no prior boxing experience at all.
My last question for this is: did they have to put some sort of gap between your front teeth, or did they not?
I know. I think I was wearing a mouthpiece, so it didn't matter.
Okay, it's just curious if a little black in between there or something.
Exactly.
All right, so you've done, and this kind of caught my eye too. I didn't know this. Now you produced as well as were writer on I, Frankenstein?
Yeah. I did the original comic for I, Frankenstein, wrote the original screenplay for I, Frankenstein. And my thing is, I produce everything I write. One of the things I learned in Hollywood is that you have to, I guess, diversify your creative lexicon. Because you never know what's going to take off first, or what's not going to work out. So you want a place to land, you want to be able to do several different things, like, because of, like I said, I love comics growing up. I wanted to be a comic book artist, but I got frustrated. I couldn't draw as well as Walt Simonson. So I was like, well, that's,
well, sure, that frustration.
yeah. But writing is something I thought I could do. So back in the 80s, I think I sent in a couple of Marvel stories. And of course, they came back rejected. And, I never thought I'd be able to get in after that. But once I broke into Hollywood, then getting into Marvel was like a snap. And from then I did, have written TV pilots, sold TV pilots, written animation, started doing voiceovers, for cartoons and video games and commercials. Then, once I write, I also produce what I write, do the comic book based off of it, and started to direct, all in effort to, like I said, diversify what I'm able to do creatively. So,
Well, but you were, this is just my recollection from film school and, what small period of time I spent in Hollywood. But like there's the associate producer, which is sort of like they just give you that kind of tag, but you don't, it's just kind of a, hey, you're associate producer, but you don't do anything. But you were
right.
listed on I, Frankenstein as executive producer. Is that accurate?
Yes, it is.
Okay, so how much of a more of a active role did you have in that film as executive producer than you would say just as a courtesy label producer?
Okay, so what I will tell you is what I have learned over the course of my years in Hollywood, that the term producer is really a very amorphous term. It can mean everything, from you creating the idea to a thank you to bringing the money to introducing two people. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
Who are able to get the film done. So, and then there's I guess, the film school definition, which means cause to exist. So, however you may cause it to exist, to that degree, you are a producer. It's just a matter of which title you're going to have. Like, I'm sure if you look at old movies, you see the term co-producer. Well, co-producer meant something back then. Now a co-producer is someone they give to a thank you they give to the writer. You know what I'm saying? And so it doesn't mean as much. Now, some people might still use it as, no, you are actually, a actual single card producer. But that's not really true, you know. So as an executive producer, it's more like a title, but I'm already shepherding what I want done in the film to an extent. Of course, the financiers, they're the ones who really have the final say.
Right.
So, once I sell it, well, that's it. They're like, see you later. Get your check.
When you get actually here, let me, a couple of people have some stuff in the chat I want to get to real quick. And I have another question about that for you. But Lieutenant Hughes for $2, thank you very much. The super chat, he says, I love the Underworld films and I, Frankenstein. Look at that. F in the chat says, he's scarier than Darth Vader. Talking about your voice, of course.
Right.
And if I needed a voice, I'd use his. So there you go. Let's see. So my let me get rid of that. My next question then is when you put together a script and you're trying to get a movie going, right? For example, like Underworld or I, Frankenstein, are you concerned about, hey, how big of a role, your role in the movie as an actor, or are you more concerned with just being a writer and getting the movie done? Or is it like
I do both. And so my thing is to be smart about it. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
My thing is to be number 10, 5 through 10 on the call sheet.
Okay.
When you're 5 through 10 on the call sheet, they leave you alone. It's when you're number 1, 1 through 4 that they have a problem with you. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
And, so once you take yourself out of that realm and you give yourself a lesser role but prominent, then they're more, likely to let you play it, and that's no problem at all. So that's what I do. So I write the script I'm going to write. I know based upon what characters I have, which one is better suited for me. And I go, along that path.
Okay.
Yeah.
Comics for Life would like to know, which do you find more gratifying? I'm sure not financially, but gratifying creatively, writing for Hollywood or for comics?
Comics. I think, there's something about comic books. Since it's a little unreal, since, there's more for the mind to imagine. You know what I'm saying?
Yes.
And you create these worlds, whereas with film, everything is created for you. You know what I'm saying? Like, I know this is going to sound weird, but let's look at, special effects or VFX or whatever. CGI, I think, is great. But one of the things that I really liked were the stop motion effects in, like, King Kong,
Sure.
the Valley of Gwanji, 20 million miles to Earth, the Beast from 20,000 Fathoms. And when they came out with both the 1976 version of King Kong and Peter Jackson's 2005 version, I was kind of disappointed that they didn't use stop motion. I mean, I know, now they're not going to use stop motion. But Ray Harryhausen said something interesting once. He said a lot of people would complain, especially as we started getting into the CG world or maybe creature suits, that it didn't look real enough. And his thing was like, well, it's supposed to look unreal. It's not real. And that's the attitude that I have. It's not real. You get lost in this fantasy thing, and I think there is something to be said about that. You know what I'm saying?
Well, I think you got to. I think we as creative people or artists and fans, just pure fans, are the same way in a lot of respects. But it's like we appreciate the artistic effort that goes into something like that, and that makes it kind of special. Whereas the average moviegoer might say that looks fake, so I don't get it. So why aren't we doing CGI or whatever? But I think that sort of jades. At least for me, I love practical effects makeup because I get to well, you were in Planet of the Apes, right? The Tim Burton one. And Rick Baker's makeup for that film was phenomenal.
Yes.
And just being able to sit there artistically and just appreciate what the guy put together in that film makes practical effects and stop motion really cool to us because we really appreciate what goes into it to make it what it is.
Yeah. And like I said, comic books oftentimes deal with, I don't know, just crazy environments and worlds. And you remember, like, before this current age of comic book movies, none of that stuff could be duplicated properly in live action. But, and comic books were a place where you could just let your mind go.
Mhm.
And creating them and having that in your hand. I don't think there's a better feeling in the world outside of your wife and children. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
You know.
Okay, I've got, let's see, Enrico Welburn says, when is Wraith of God coming out, Aaron? That will be, supposed to get it back from the printer the last week of October. So unless that changes, which I will let all you guys know if it does, that's when we're expecting them to get them back, and then I'll be immediately start shipping out. So that's what I've got right now. Sheldon, and this is going to kind of lead into what we're about to talk about, but Sheldon for $4.99, thank you so much, Sheldon. He says, hey, Aaron, question for Kevin. How many comic titles are you currently working on, Kevin, not me? And you're here actually to promote something you're going to be launching pretty soon, but you got anything that you're working on right now, comic book wise, other than the project we're about to talk about?
Yes, I have a couple of things coming out, from, companies I can't, really talk about right now.
Mm-hmm.
And then there's also my personal, stuff outside the one I'm kickstarting. So I am always working on creating my own IPs. That is something that's perpetual that I will always do,
Okay. Okay, so let me ask you about, before I let we get off the movie stuff, let me ask you about King of Killers.
Yes.
Now, you were writer, director, and executive producer on that.
Right.
That to me, from what I've seen, that looks like that's entirely your own baby, right?
Yes. Yeah.
Talk about that a little bit, how that came together and what it is.
Well, basically, when it comes to working in Hollywood, like I said, you have to diversify your creativity. And my thing, I've been trying to, direct for years, but it's been a hard road for a myriad of reasons. Number one is lack of funding. Two, you run into a lot of shenanigans and a lot of clowns. It's like being in, Ringling Brothers, and, for whatever reason, this one came through. And so, once again, I wrote myself a part in it as well. And everything just fell into place getting it going. And so what I try to do is do kind of like an Enter the Dragon story, but with assassins. You know what I'm saying? And kind of make it this surrealistic world of an assassin's game. And that's what I did. And we had Frank Grillo, Elaine Moussi is our lead, and Stephen Dorff is in the movie as well. And we had a lot of fun.
I saw the trailer for it.
Yes.
I saw the trailer for it, and it looked like it was a blast. Now, did that come out last year, or did it just come out?
It just came out. It was released September 1st.
Okay, so it just came out. So was this theatrical release? Was it on Netflix? Where can people find it?
Okay, so it was a theatrical release, but it was a small theatrical release.
Right.
So it appeared in excuse me, around 17 theaters around the country. But it's right now it's on Apple TV. I can't remember the other ones, but the main one is Amazon Prime. Okay. And that's where I encourage people to go and find it.
Now, in today's day and age of movies and we're kind of seeing the sort of, in a way, the decline of movie theaters, the traditional way to go see films. Are you guys finding now that you're getting the box office isn't as important as what you do streaming or what previously was DVD sales and things like that? So what numbers are you guys really looking at to say, okay, this is turning a profit or it's not?
I think the way independent film goes, you make your money during your foreign sales to the different markets.
Okay.
That's what you're looking at first before it even goes to streaming. So once you do that, that's where you start to see, your, quote unquote black money coming in, and streaming is really just gravy,
Okay.
you hope the numbers are good, of course. So far, Grindhouse, Lionsgate has been happy with the receiving.
Okay.
So that's good, we're talking sequel, but we'll see.
Right. Well, I assume that much like the comic business and much like movies have always been, that you put out a project, it does well, that puts you in a better position to come in and say, okay, what am I going to do next, right?
Yes.
So, is it too early to tell on the returns on this, that maybe you've put yourself in a position, like you said, you're talking sequel, but they're sort of waiting to see how it plays out?
Yeah, we're waiting to see how it completely plays out because we haven't even sold to all the markets around the world yet,
Okay.
So we're waiting for that. And, but like I said, we're talking sequel already. So the parties that need to be interested are interested.
Excellent.
But we don't know where we're going to land just yet.
Okay. Lieutenant Hughes for $5. Thank you for that, Lieutenant. Appreciate it. He says, thoughts on the Congo film? That was a Michael Crichton book and made into a film. And I think Stan Winston did the monkey effects on that. Still on my mind decades later. And I saw it as a kid. Also, what was the idea behind creating Underworld and I, Frankenstein? We'll take those one at a time. Congo was And I remember Rick Baker being really pissed off they didn't ask him to do the monkey effects. And so he got his revenge on Planet of the Apes later. But
yeah, I actually thought Congo, because I didn't know much about it. When I heard about it, and I was on the set as an extra.
Oh, were you?
Yes, I was on the set as an extra, and what happened is that Kathleen Kennedy and Frank Marshall saw me, and they liked what they saw just based upon the little bits I was doing.
Mm-hmm.
And so, one of the ADs pulled me aside and said, look, they want to talk to you, So I went over there and talked to them, and they offered me this role, which was cool. Now what was funny about that role is that I had actually auditioned for it a month or two before and didn't get it. So gratuitously, I'm working on it as an extra. The producer and director see me. They're like, he's perfect. I get the role. Which goes to show you, which is another bit of shenanigans I figured out. A lot of the casting should be done, or most of the casting should be done by producers and directors, not the casting director.
I would think.
Yeah, but what I thought it was going to be, I thought Congo was going to be like aliens in the jungle. You know what I'm saying? With these ape-like creatures. And it wasn't. It really wasn't. But what are you gonna
Do you take it? Well, for example, if you write a script for, let's just say a comic book or even a film for that matter, where it's a little bit, you're more involved, it's more personal, and you don't get good reviews or something, you take it a lot more personal. But if you're in an actor, say like you were in Congo or Planet of the Apes or whatever, right? And say the film doesn't get great reviews or whatever, do you take that personally and you're like, oh, I really failed? Or do you just kind of look, this is what I did. I did a good job for what I was required to do, and you just kind of put that on your reel, and you don't really look at it as like a personal sort of letdown or anything like that if it doesn't do as well as maybe you'd hoped?
Yeah, I mean, you have to separate yourself from these things, especially as an actor. You realize as an actor, you're a tool. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
And, you're told to do things a certain way. And, you do what you're told. You're being paid to do what they tell you to do.
Right.
And so if it doesn't turn out well, look, that's just the way it goes. Now, you might not be happy with your performance, and then that's on you,
Right.
but that's just the way it works. So if someone doesn't like the film that I've acted in, I'm like, well, fine, Now,
That's nothing to do with me, right?
yeah, but even on King of Killers, and I, wrote and directed it, we had some good reviews, but we've also had some horrific ones too, But it's funny, both producers and directors alike have told me don't even pay attention to the reviews, even the good ones, because it doesn't mean anything. They don't mean anything, and they're so right because everything's so subjective,
Right.
So
On the second part of that question, it was like, what was the idea or the inspiration behind creating Underworld and I, Frankenstein? I know as a kid that you were a big, and obviously still are a big monster guy, much like myself.
yeah,
So was that just, I mean, do you think creatively in terms like, because I tend to find myself doing that when I come up with IPs, there's always some sort of monster element in there, whether, I don't necessarily set out to do it all the time, but it always seems to work its way in. So when were you like thinking, I'm a big fan of Universal Monsters, wouldn't it be kind of cool to take those concepts and update them? Or what was your thought process when you're creating those two?
well, my thing is that I always liked, I mean, this is where we have now crossovers. And when they had Frankenstein meets the Wolfman, I was like, okay, see, there you go. And when they were all three fighting in House of Dracula and House of Frankenstein, love that. So how do you make that more modern? And so, in fact, I remember there were several producers who didn't understand werewolves fighting vampires. They were like, well, what are you talking about? And it's like, oh my goodness, are you actually telling me that you need to think about that? But, they're very myopic. If you didn't grow up with this stuff, from what I've seen, it does seem like if you didn't grow up with this stuff, loving it, when these people come to you with these ideas and you're in a position of power, you don't necessarily understand what they're saying, funny story, a buddy of mine, he used to work at, I think it was 20th Century Fox, and he was an executive over there, and his boss comes in the door and slams a script on his desk and tells him no one, angrily I might add, no one will ever watch a movie where robots turn into cars. And it's like, really? And he wound up quitting in 2 weeks. Because he was tired of hearing stuff like that. It's just like the people who used to decry superhero movies. They'll never work. And it's like, and now all of Hollywood, Martin Scorsese, James Cameron, they're all angry at the success of
Superhero films. Yeah, I was talking to a writer once, comic book writer, and I just kind of, we were talking about something, I think maybe some superhero films, I'm not sure. And I just said, why are the people that are in charge always the biggest idiots? And he said, because he said, all the creative people that know what's what and know what's good, they all want to be making the movies. So they're all the ones trying to make the movies. And then you get these just shirts and ties up there that don't know anything about it that are calling the shots. And that's why you have the problems you have in film and also now in comics.
Exactly. I'm amazed at the amount of editors that don't have comic book collections. And
Yeah.
I'm not talking about, oh yeah, I like comics when I was a kid and you might have had 60 books. No. I'm talking about 20 long boxes. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
That's, those are the people who need to be editing the books. They know the histories of the characters. If you're going to edit the Hulk, you have better read the vast majority of the issues that he has appeared in. So you know, but that's not what they require editors to have now. Editors are basically people who say no, you can't do that.
Exactly.
If
They're paid to tell you no.
yeah, exactly. And
Kellraiser for $4.99. Thank you so much, Kellraiser. Appreciate that. He says, I read in a trade article that Underworld might be rebooted. Is there any truth to that, Kevin?
you know what? They have been trying to do an Underworld TV show for the last 13 years. So, yeah, exactly. So I've heard they're trying to do one. I don't know if they'll reboot the franchise as a movie, but I know they want to do a TV show. I know Lynn Wiseman has been quoted as, wanting to bring one to fruition, but they're not going to ask me about it. But like I said, they've been trying to do it for 13 years.
Someone asked earlier, and I actually wanted to ask you this too, because I was watching some clips from Underworld, and I was like, are the werewolves, is that all CGI, or is there any practical effects where you were like in a suit or a partial suit or something?
Yeah, well, I was never in the actual suit. Like, that was Kirk Carley and I can't remember the other cat's name, but they were in the actual suits because they were svelte, and tall. I think for the first Underworld, I had just the teeth and the eyes, scleral lenses. And for the third one, I had more of a facial makeup, prosthetic. But I didn't get in the actual suit. But I think there was only one or two CGI werewolves. I think one when they jumped on the train. There was CGI, and I think when you could see me transform, that was CGI. But for the most part, no, it was all practical effects.
Okay. Look at this. Mark Grendel for $20. Or Mac Grendel, $20. He says, Underworld was my intro to, thank you very much for that $20, by the way, Mac. Appreciate it. Underworld was my intro to some standouts that I've never seen before. Billy Nighy, Michael Sheen, and an imposing lieutenant of the Vikings called Rays. How cool was it to learn the whole world came from the mind of that man? Of course, he's referring to you. I mean, do you have a moment where, or did you ever have a moment, or do you occasionally, you kind of step back and you look at the film and the franchise, and there's video games too, right? And there's, do you just sit there and go, wow, I got to do this, Or is it just business as usual at this point?
You know what? I've had that feeling more from comics than from film.
Interesting.
And that's mostly because you can be far removed from it in terms of film. Even, having directed, King of Killers, and I was directing it right there on set, wrote every word. There can be a disconnect with film for some reason, not to mention the fact that by the time I see the full clip, or you do, it's been 2 years.
Right. I was going to say that time. Do you think the time and the amount of people that work on it sort of creates that sort of?
Yeah, and film is extremely collaborative. So you have different people doing different things. Like I might say I want this kind of lighting, but I don't design that lighting. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
I might say I want the room to look like this, but someone has to decorate it to be as such. You see what I'm saying? So my The thing is just to guide it. My script is a template, or a guide. So yeah, there can be times when I say, wow, sometimes, but it's not as intense as you might think.
Interesting. Now, you moving on real quickly, you've done a lot of voice work in animation as well, right?
Yeah, I've done some.
So most notably Solomon Grundy, and but I saw that you had, and I haven't. I'll be honest with you, I haven't checked out a lot of the superhero cartoons past the early '90s when we had the Batman series by Bruce Timm, and then followed up by the Superman and stuff like that. Do you how I guess is that any more regular, the voice work, once you start doing some voices in animation? Do you get called a lot more, or is it just like film? It's just kind of hit and miss.
For me, it's been hit and miss.
Mm.
For some people, they work all the time. I know a couple of cats. That's all they do. But like for me, since my voice, from what I've been told, is so unique, other people, yeah. But you have to understand, everyone can make their voice heavy. You
That's
see
true.
what I'm saying? And so, why get that does not make me unique in that sense. So I know a guy named Kevin Michael Richardson, great voiceover guy. He can make his voice heavy, and he is also very good at what he does. They'll call him rather than call me. It's really about, like, when you're a celebrity, like for film, that kind of animation is celebrity driven. So they're going to get the jobs. For television or streaming, it's who you know. And if you don't know anyone, well, they use the people they're familiar with, and that's just the way it is.
Right.
So I understand all that. So, the things I've gotten I've gotten because I met producers directly, not casting directors, but the producers directly, or the voiceover directors directly, and that's how I've gotten roles.
Isn't that interesting how often that is the case in the creative field, where you can say you can have all the talent in the world, but it always comes down to office politics, doesn't it? Who do you know? Who did you meet at a convention, or you met someplace else and developed a relationship with, and then they think, oh, I'm going to call him to do this.
Exactly. And the thing is, it's like that. I've found that it's like that in all walks of life. I've talked to professional football players, and I've known quite a few, throughout the years, and they all tell me the same thing. It's like 65% of the people in the NFL deserve to be there. The other 35, it's who you know, where you went to school, and that does not mean that those guys can't be good. But it's like there are other people out there who might have been better, but for whatever reason, it never felt
the opportunity. Yep. Jay Lee for $5. I'm guessing this is not the Jay Lee of comics fame. I want to say thanks again, Kevin, for making Underworld. It was a key in how I designed my werewolves in my horror novels. So there you go. Your influence is.
Yeah. Well, thank Patrick Totopoulos for that.
Jimmy Reyes Art says, Aaron, I worked on ZMD with Kevin for Red 5 Comics.
Okay, so hey, Jimmy, how you doing?
So Jimmy getting a shout out there. Comics for Life says, if you were given a chance to be the editor of any title at the Big Two, would you do it? And which titles would you like to tackle? Well,
I would never do it.
I wouldn't do it in this current environment. There's no way. No. Now you take me back 30 years ago, that's a different story.
Yeah, I think the characters they're not the same as they used to be.
No.
I mean, once you turn Cap into a Nazi, and then you double down on that, I don't understand.
Yeah. Well, there used to be a lot of clarity in comics, and almost like Star Wars, right? The good guys wore white, the bad guys were dressed in black, and it was, you had heroes who were heroic and you had villains who were evil, and you wanted the good guys to beat the bad guys. And it was a very sort of simple formula.
Exactly.
And it's, I don't even think they have heroes and villains anymore. They just have people with strange, quirky personalities doing stuff that you and I would never do if I had superpowers or, yeah.
And the thing is, I think they lost their audience because, comic books were supposed to be simple morality plays. You know what I'm
Yes.
saying?
Yes.
Simple morality plays, for I want to say young kids, but Stan Lee, he basically said we can make this for older kids because college kids were reading them.
Right.
And sometimes, and a lot of people miss this, not everything has to be so serious. Sometimes you just want escapist material.
Yeah.
And it's just, pardon the term, dumb fun, simple fun. I think comic books were meant to be the equivalent of the Saturday matinee.
Yes.
You know what I'm saying?
That's a good analogy. I think that works.
That's all they were meant to be. And simple, get in, get out, good guys versus bad guys. Whatever the cops or the military can't handle, have superheroes handle them. And that's it. Nothing more than that. So
all right. I want to do one thing. I haven't done this. Actually, David Williams was the last person I had on that I did this with. I want to do this, and then we're going to talk about your new project.
all right.
But I've got this thing I call 70s Showdown. And if I can find my little intro here, give me a second. There it is. Let me run this and then we'll do it. Okay. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to bring up two characters, Kevin, and I want you to tell me which you prefer and why. Okay.
All right.
And these are all characters that debuted in the 70s. So right up our alley. So here we go. You got to choose between Conan or Cole. Who are you going with?
Okay, well, Conan, and I think that he ushered in a type of storytelling that we hadn't seen before in Marvel. In fact, that was the first comic book that everyone. Now, I wasn't a huge Conan fan back then. If I liked Conan, it was because of the novels.
Mm-hmm.
But that was the first book that I was made aware that was going to be worth a lot of money someday. Like I think where I might have paid $5 for Silver Surfer #1, Conan went for 15.
Yes, it was very hot there for a while.
Yeah, exactly. So I'm gonna pick Conan just because he was the first barbarian character that they really took off.
My favorite has always been Cole, and maybe it's just because I'm a contrarian, but I always liked, and I love Barry Smith's work on the first 24 issues of Conan, but I really liked John and Marie Severin's work on the first 10 issues, and then of course issue 11 we're looking at here was Mike Plug, and I like the idea that he was a barbarian king. So he was a barbarian, but he still had responsibilities that Conan necessarily wouldn't have had to deal with. But so I was always a Cole fan, although I have, after having written and drawn a couple Conan stories now, kind of fallen in love with Conan too. So, but I was curious what your feelings were on that. We've got a few more here, but I want to say Dan Fraga, I don't know if you know Fraga Boom, but there's a guy's show you want to get on to promote your project too. So Dan, you hear me, Dan? I'll have Kevin reach out to you. Anyways, thanks for joining us, Dan. I appreciate it. Okay, so number 2 here. Sorry, I got to push about 6 buttons to make this work. All right. Now, are you going with Darkseid or are you going with Thanos here?
You know what? I'm going to go with Darkseid. And I'm trying to figure out a good reason why. I think Thanos, well, obviously Darkseid came first. and I know
Mhm.
Starlin was heavily influenced by Darkseid to come up with Thanos. But I think Darkseid had this thing where he was more content to hide behind the scenes, to be the puppet master, than actually
Yeah.
go out there and fight. And I thought that made him much more insidious. He did his evil work through minions,
Yeah.
and so you always had the promise of power and the mystique of how powerful he was, because he rarely stepped into the light to actually engage. And I like that, you know. Now, you know, like I think recently he got beat up by Superman, so I don't think he's as interesting anymore. You know what I'm saying? So I'm like, forget it.
Well, I was a Marvel zombie, you know, so Thanos was my first exposure. I mean, I'd seen Darkseid, but I hadn't really read the Kirby DC stuff early on when I was a kid. And so, you know, I was familiar with Thanos and Starlin's run and Captain Marvel. So my initial leanings were towards Thanos, but after reading both of them, I agree with you on Darkseid. He's a much more sinister, um, more interesting force, as this all powerful but manipulative. I mean, just much more sinister character, I think, where Thanos is just kind of this destroyer of worlds. But I will say that I did, you know, was it, I want to say Marvel, it was the 2-in-1 annual. It was an Avengers 7 annual and the 2-in-1 annual where Warlock died, but he killed Thanos. At least we thought he did. Those two comics were pretty darn cool. When I was a kid.
You know, I agree, and I think that was my first exposure to Thanos, but Starlin's art just blew the whole story out of the water. You know what I'm saying? And I really dug it. Really dug it. You know.
All right, so you're a monster guy. So what are your feelings about these two? Got to pick one here.
Okay, Werewolf by Night. You know, I think I have both of these issues. I know I have Ghost Rider,
Mhm.
and I know I bought Werewolf by Night, but I haven't. Excuse me, I haven't seen it in a while. But Ghost Rider, I just never really got into him that much. I think I bought Ghost Rider #1 in Marvel Spotlight 5, where he first appeared, and you know, I didn't buy many of his other comics. You know, Werewolf by Night I thought was interesting, but I didn't buy too many monster comics either, because by then I had been really, you know, brought into the superhero realm,
Mhm.
and that's what I mostly focused on. Like I said, I buy the #1 issues, or if I saw a new character that I liked in, like, you know, the monster realm, you know, I would get that. Like, you know, I had never seen a black superhero before, so you know, I'm like, I got to get Blade. You know, Tomb of Dracula #10. You know, things like that. But I kind of checked out of Dracula when he beat the Silver Surfer. I'm like, oh, get out of here.
Yeah.
You know, I'm like, okay.
Oh man. Well, I was a Werewolf by Night fan all the way, and I did think Ghost Rider was cool. You know, the motorcycle and the flaming skull head and everything. But I got, and maybe it's my Universal Monsters, you know, my love of Universal Monsters. But Werewolf by Night was always my out of these two was always my go-to.
Yeah.
Real quick, Vic is a troublemaker. For $1.99, he says, he's talking to you. He says, have you read Wraith of God, which of course is my crowdfunded book? And what did you not like about it?
I haven't had the pleasure of reading it yet, but I will.
There we go, Vic. So thank you for your $1.99, though, you troublemaker. Okay. Now this one I think is interesting because you get a variety of opinions on this one. Did you like Luke Cage as a hero for hire better than as just straight up Power Man superhero, or vice versa?
Man, that is a rough one, and here's why. I thought during the hero for hire phase, he was better, but Luke Cage got bad to me, probably after issue 24. You know what I'm saying? It went
Oh,
down.
Black Goliath. 24 was Black Goliath, wasn't it? First
Yeah. After that, because I think 25, he dealt with this vampire that wasn't a vampire. And then it went downhill for that. Maybe you had that issue that George Perez did, issue 27, where he fought some superpowered wrestler. But I didn't like that story. But it went downhill until Chris Claremont and John Byrne took over. And, my favorite, writer artist of all time is John Byrne. So once
but as a concept for the character, do you like the idea that he was like a hero for hire, or did you like him better as sort of a...
I've criticized, I actually wrote a letter to Marvel. They actually got printed.
Oh, really?
About the hero for hire concept. And, I didn't like the fact that here you had, this brother selling his powers.
Mm-hmm.
And, I know a lot of people disagree with that, but my thing is that other heroes did it for free. That's that way you show your altruism.
Right.
So, for, the black guy to come in here and he wants to sell his powers, I was like, I'm not liking that. However, However, looking at the worth of the stories, the hero for hire stories were better, and it was an interesting hook. It's just not what I like for the character after a while. Mm-hmm. And you see now, Luke Cage is running around aimless. I don't even know what he does anymore.
Well, I always kind of, you're looking back at this point after already seeing something like The Equalizer, but I always kind of look back and say, well, he was kind of like The Equalizer, except he was charging people. But I like the idea, and I get the racial component that you're talking about here, but I always like kind of the idea of, because I could never figure out how superheroes made a living, right? And I thought that here's this guy who's actually saying, hey, you know what? I've got value, and I'm going to. I just thought that made him sort of a little bit more interesting. But then, of course, you're right. It questions what kind of a hero the guy actually is if he's charging to basically help people.
Yeah, and the thing is, okay, if you look at it, okay, he's a private detective, and that's fine. It's just that you set him up as a hero, and I think that's what Marvel was going for. What do we call him? Do we call him Luke Cage, or should he have a superhero name to let him be part of the crew? And I get it. Mm-hmm. I get it. And so, they changed his name to Power Man. But like I said, after that, the stories just weren't any good.
Yeah, they weren't as interesting. They just became sort of your typical superhero type stuff.
Yeah.
Okay. Back to monster characters. How about these two?
Ooh, you know what? I liked Morbius better. Now, the reason I like Morbius better is because I am not a huge fan of mysticism. You know what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. Except if you use it in, for the bad guys. I don't like, heroes that use mysticism. But with Morbius, he was a scientific vampire. And I kind of like that. You know what I'm saying? I thought that was interesting. Now, he was also part of a comic book I read when I was a kid before I started collecting comics. Once again, my grandfather bought it for me. Mm-hmm. And it was one of his first appearances. Maybe it was it
Spider-Man 101?
Yeah, 101, where,
mm-hmm.
where Spider-Man had the 6 arms. And I was like, yeah, I kind of like it. I kind of like this character. So, that was cool.
I'm like you. I mean, I was raised in a Christian family, growing up, and it was like, I couldn't bring myself to buy this because of the voodoo element. But I thought the covers, this one by Romita, and then of course the next one was by Gil Kane, where he's fighting like these snakes, and I just thought the covers were he looked really, really cool. But I never actually read the books for that reason. As a kid, my mom probably would have killed me if I brought one of those home.
Right.
So, But just in terms of visual appeal, I've always kind of thought Brother Voodoo was kind of cool.
Yeah.
But again, my first exposure was to Morbius in Amazing 101 because I was a Spider-Man collector.
Right.
That six-armed Spider-Man saga was one of my all-time favorites.
Right.
Okay, here these two came out about the same time, and so I bought both of them because they were first issues. But anyway, go ahead. Which one do you prefer here?
Nova all the way.
Yeah.
Nova all the way. Even though I've learned a little bit about the reason for Miss Marvel all these years later. But whenever I've had my dream list of Avengers, dream roster, she was always on the list as Miss Marvel. I don't like Captain Marvel.
No, I
But
don't either.
but Miss Marvel I thought was a great character. And I think they had to change her. But Nova, I thought that was a tremendous character. In fact, I had lunch with Mark Wolfman once, and I told him how much I liked the character and how much potential I thought he had. But it's just a shame that they canceled it after 25 issues. 24
Yeah,
issues.
I picked up the first 4 issues of Ms. Marvel simply because it was a first issue, and then Buscema was drawing it, so I thought, okay. But as a kid, I didn't have much interest in it. Nova, I thought was great, even though he was a bit of a Spider-Man sort of clone. But I thought he had great villains. I thought they came up with great villains for Nova, and that sort of kept me interested in the book. And like you, I was disappointed when it got canceled. I was like, 25 issues in.
Yeah, and I like the visual of the way John Buscema drew his flying.
Yes.
His from the waist down was a streak.
Yeah.
That was really cool. That was really cool.
Eric the Guapo for $10. Thank you very much, Eric. He says, "Hi, Aaron, but I am here for Kevin. I grabbed a copy of Darkstorm the Conqueror at my local comic shop, Horizon Comics, and really enjoyed it. Is Volume 2 going to be available soon?"
Yes, it will be as soon as I can get issue 2 to the printer.
So are you saying it's done and it's just a matter of...
Yeah, it's done. It's just a matter of me getting it to the printer.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
All right, I got a few more. Because I know deep down you love talking comics.
Oh yeah.
So, all right, how about these two guys?
I'm going to go with Iron Fist. I could never get into Master of Kung Fu. And I think the reason is John Byrne again.
Yeah.
And the fact that Iron Fist had the superpower, charging up his fist, the 5 fingers of death,
Mm-hmm.
all that. So I really enjoyed Iron Fist more. I think maybe I got 1 issue of Master of Kung Fu, just didn't like it,
Yeah, I only bought 1 issue, and it was when Man-Thing guest starred. But they, the thing about Master of Kung Fu had some great art on there with Galassi and Mike Zeck.
Yes.
And I did like the idea that, oh my goodness, Fu Manchu was his dad. I always thought that was really kind of cool. But I love the superhero element of Iron Fist. And so I gravitated like you to Iron Fist just because he felt more like a superhero rather than just, Master of Kung Fu to me was a Bruce Lee movie, right? An ongoing Bruce Lee movie. And I needed that superhero fix.
Exactly.
Okay, so we agree on a lot of these. That's pretty good. All right, how about this? Just a couple more. 2 Starlin things here.
Ooh. I am going to go with Warlock.
Interesting. Okay.
Yeah. Now there are a couple of reasons for that. Now, Captain Marvel, I bought his first, 3 issues, not including superhero comics, 17 and 18.
Captain Marvel?
Yeah. of Captain Marvel. Yeah.
When he changed costumes from the
Well,
green to
actually, I meant maybe I have the numbers wrong because he first appeared in Marvel superheroes.
right, number 12.
Number 12 and 13. I'm sorry.
Right, yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Okay, so those two, and then when he was in his first 3 issues, I bought those where he Triton, Namor,
Super Scroll, I think, was in there.
yeah, Super Scroll. Those I liked those issues, but I think with Warlock, I could see that Starlin was trying to do something very, can I say, Dionysian,
Sure.
because because I love the character, and it's a shame they couldn't keep him, but I love the character him. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And when you start looking at Marvel Premiere 1, I think it was.
Yeah.
It's like,
And
this is really interesting. And then they got Cosmic with the Magus and all that.
yeah.
And that whole storyline I thought was phenomenal.
Okay, now here's my question to you about this. When I was a kid, now you're a couple years older than me, so maybe you were a little bit more, maybe a lot more intelligent and mature than I was. But when I picked this Warlock up, I got lost as a kid. I loved the artwork, but I couldn't follow it. It was just too out there.
Yeah, it was definitely out there, but I bought them later in my comic book reading. I think I was probably 17.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah, because I didn't buy everything at the same time. A lot of stuff I discovered later because I read other books. Like, one of the things that I think these modern comic book editors, or companies I should say, don't do is that they don't have editorial notes. I remember the only reason I went looking for, let's say, what was it? Okay, Fantastic Four, 20, 25 and 26, was because there was a footnote in I think Fantastic Four 112 when the Hulk and Thing first fought. You know what I'm saying? And the reason I got Fantastic Four 112 is because in that Treasury edition, when the Hulk and the Thing were fighting that Jim Starlin drew from Marvel Feature number 11, the Thing said, I guess I must have gotten stronger since the last time we fought. And it had an editorial note about Fantastic Four number 112. You see, and so, I'm saying all this to say that these comics led me to go seek other comics. So when I would get those issues, I would go back and read them. And some of these issues mentioned Warlock, who he was, Captain Marvel, see this issue, blah blah blah. And so that's how I came to buy some of these issues later.
Yeah.
Starlin's artwork was always great.
Yeah. I'm probably going to lean Captain Marvel just because I could follow it easier. But I always loved the artwork in Warlock, and it was really trippy. But David Brohawk Williams says Kevin is a big nerd. So there you go. For $1.99, Dummel Vic says, "What? Here we go. The nerds again. What you nerds think about Gladiator Call Arc? I don't even know who that is. Do you, Kevin?"
Yeah, that's the Gladiator character from the Imperial Guard.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. They basically made him more of a superhero name by giving his real name Kalark or Kalark. Like Kal-El. So since I think Dave Cockrum designed him to be like Superboy, then they go all the way down that path with the analogy. But I've always liked the character. It would be easier if they tried to nail down what his power level is.
Mhm.
It fluctuates. It's all over the place, but I like the character very much.
Oops, that's not the one I wanted to hit. Where is it? There we go. Fopeezy says Kevin is a legit comic guy. Oh, he's legit, man.
Yeah, and it's funny because I was talking to a good buddy of mine, and we were talking about how has the comic book industry gone down because of the amount of Hollywood people they've let in? And I said, yeah. And he says, you're Hollywood. I'm like, no. I said, I was a comic book collector long before I wanted to get into the film industry. Long before. So I am a comic book guy before I'm a film guy. You know what I'm saying?
There you go.
Yeah.
Well, you should be. Okay. 2 more here for you, and then we'll move on to your project. But Swamp Thing or Man Thing?
You know what? I'm gonna have to go with Man Thing. I was a Marvel guy too. I think the only Swamp Thing story I had read before Alan Moore's run was from a Batman Treasury edition where he fought Batman. But the Man Thing had a more interesting look. Like the 3,
Yes.
things coming down. The catchphrases, whatever fears burns that the man things touch. I really like all that stuff. Really
Now,
did.
were you, though, being a monster guy, were you ever a fan of Wrightson, though? I mean, I got into Swamp Thing because of Bernie Wrightson, but my favorite character to draw is Man Thing because of just what you described. He's more, to me, is more interesting looking. And I read both. But were you a Wrightson fan at all?
I was a Bernie Wrightson fan, but I never bought anything specifically for his work. Like, for instance, I never bought that Frankenstein book. I wish I had, but I just did not.
Well, there's plenty of copies still floating around. They published that thing about 40 times. So, Dumbo Vic says, "Holy smokes, he knows a lot. Aaron is a fake comic girl." I don't agree with that at all. Kevin knows his stuff, but so do I. Marcus Killigrew says that, how about the Heap? Of course, Man Thing was sort of a ripoff of the Heap, but that's okay. We're all like borrowing from stuff that came before us. Okay, here's your last one.
Okay.
Sorry, pushing all the 6 buttons again. Here we go. Wolverine with a David Williams cover, or we'll give David a little shout out there. And Mike Zeck, of course, Punisher. The artist doesn't make any difference. So just character-wise, who do you prefer here?
Yeah, okay. Art-wise, the image on the left is whack. Wackadoo.
Yeah, I hear you, man. I hear you.
Okay. Character-wise, I'm going to pick Wolverine. More so than a Punisher. Wolverine, just being part of that X-Men crew, and the way he came on the scene and the way they used him, I thought was, brilliant. In fact, I think Wolverine was one of those post Jack and Stan characters that really took a foothold in the Marvel universe or in comic fandom very, very quickly, and I still remember the feeling I got. I was probably 13 or 14 when, you're reading, I think it was X-Men 100, where he pops his claws from his hands. And everyone was like, "Oh man, what is that?" And that's when we first found out that they were real. They were part of him. They weren't part of his gloves. And I thought that was cool. We had never seen a character like that. Now, the Punisher, I mean, he was okay. I liked the way Frank Miller handled him more so than, the Spider-Man creators at the time. But then again, I still don't think I've read Spider-Man 129 where he first appeared.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I don't think I have. Now, I will tell you something, and this is going to make your fans mad at me. I'm not a huge Spider-Man fan. You know,
Really?
yeah, I'm not a huge Spider-Man fan. You know, I'm not. I don't want to say I can't stand the character, but I just feel that since he's one of these flagship characters, they let him win too much against the other. And I'm a big battle boards guy. You know what I'm saying? I like the versus stuff.
Yeah.
So you know, I don't like it when he when he beat Fire Lord. Man, I threw that book across the room. I'm like, get out of here. You know, I'm like, you know, why do they always do that to him? No. And I just can't stand. You know, he's like Batman over in the DC universe. You know, like recently, did you see that Batman? He leaped from one of the space stations and went through re-entry with just the bat suit on and a rebreather and lands on Earth. I'm like, oh man.
So that was it. No more Batman for you, huh?
I'm like, here we go again, you know. So Spider-Man's one of those characters for me, but you know, but yeah, the Punisher. After a while, he just became a body counter. You know, and I'm like, that's
I'm completely art driven on the Punisher. The only Punisher I really like is Zex, and then I thought Klaus Janson did a pretty good job on that when I think it was Mike Baron and Janson when they had the regular Punisher series after that miniseries in the late '80s. But yeah, I mean, it was. I agree that again, Wolverine, and because I'm a superhero guy, Wolverine more appealing to me long term. I think more different guys have done him well.
yeah.
Whereas, you know, like I said, the Punisher to me, if Zach's drawing him, I'm all in. If Zach isn't drawing him, then it would depend. Wolverine tends to cross over to several different artists have worked on him and writers, and he seems, if they do it right, it seems to be a more consistently effective character.
Yeah.
So David, where is it? David sent you where is it? Sent a message here. Oh, he says, I'm gonna tag you back, Kevin. You won't know where and you won't know when, so sleep light.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, see, now you're in trouble. Okay, so we've talked a lot about several different things that are of great interest to me, but now tell us, you wanted to come on because you got a book that you're getting ready to launch as a crowdfunder. So tell us about it.
Yes. Okay. So on October 18th, I'm launching my first Kickstarter. I'm doing a book called Gentara, Rise of the Jinn. And it was first a book that I did with Zenescope. My partners over there, you know, Ralph Tedesco and Joe Brucia, great guys. And it's simply about a cop who has never been sick before in her life, and she doesn't know why. But you know, all of a sudden becomes terminally ill with pancreatic cancer. And but as she's going through her thing while you know chasing the serial killer, she discovers that she's part of an ancient race of genies, in which she is the prophesied um, person who is going to lead them over mankind. And so, you know, this, detective, this DC cop, finds herself in this world of magic, you know, that she, you know, has never had to experience before. And it's really interesting. You know, like I said, I published it at first with Zenescope. And so we're bringing it to, you know, a larger audience in a trade paperback form with additional materials. And we're going to have a cover drawn by Ron Garney and perhaps some others. Yeah, exactly. And
now,
so,
are you considering using David Williams at all on this project? Just asking.
he's a bit slow. It'll probably be until next year I get it.
Yeah, okay. Yeah. Oh, ouch.
But he's a great artist. So, but I like his work. We're doing some other things together.
Okay, so this is a collection of how many issues in this trade?
3 issues, and we're going to have extras,
Okay.
in this as well. Our artist is Elmo Bondoc, who's done a tremendous job, from the Philippines. He really hit this out of the park, and we're excited to bring this to, the world in this form.
So the book is, at this point, the new material, is it finished as well, or is it something you're working on?
Yeah, the new material, we're working on that as we speak.
Okay.
Yes. And, of course, our sketch is already done. So it'll be easy to just insert, the new pages, and we're going to have a great time with this. Great time.
Well, I'll tell you this, if she looks anything like Barbara Eden, I'm in. So
Yeah, we also have a couple of jokes in there about that too.
okay, so do you have like a sign up or something? Is that what this is?
Yes, it is.
Okay.
That's where you sign up.
Well,
And,
that's interesting because so you're getting ready to I'm going to simplify it a little bit and say you're getting ready to launch a Babe book, and I am too, called Kit Carter, which is in this early sign up stages as well. But that's kind of a 50s sci-fi space babe thing.
yeah.
So, how long ago did you originally come up with this concept, and where was it published originally?
Man, I came up with this probably 15 years ago. And but I never really did anything with it because you have these ideas in your head and you might write the treatments, but you just don't have the time to get into them because there are other things more pressing. So I pitched it to Zenescope, and so between myself and Zenescope, we published it there, and so that's where it originally appeared as just Rise of the Jinn. And for those of you who don't know, Jinn is another term for genie, and so she's a part of an ancient race of genies. So,
What year was this originally published? This series?
2020, the last issue was 2022, early 2022.
So it's not that old. It's just like you just okay. So you want to get it out to a broader audience. So you're collecting what you've done, bringing in some new material to kind of get people into. Is this something that after you publish this that you'd like? Is it an ongoing thing, or is it more of a graphic novel type complete story?
More of a graphic novel complete story.
Okay.
And we already have interest in it from certain film types, which we're excited about. And I think that's one of the that's one of the ways you increase your creative footprint with your books. Try to get it out there and get it done as a TV show or a movie or a video game. And I don't think there's anything wrong with that. I think that's the way you can ensure that it lives on, longer, in the public's eye.
That's the modern strategy, though, really, isn't it? I mean, you develop an IP, and you're not, even if you got it for comics, you're like, well, I'm going to talk to some people at Netflix or wherever and see about this and other. So, did you take this and publish it first and then take it around, or were you shopping the concept in Hollywood while you're working on the book?
No, I published it first because you can take a treatment out there, but or even a script. But one of the things that I've discovered is that scripts can be difficult to read, and like if you've ever seen coverage on scripts that you've written, you're like, what script were they reading?
Yeah. I used to read scripts when I got out of film school for a TriStar, and I know what you're talking about.
And it's like, sometimes, they just don't get it. And, but if you have a graphic novel or a comic that they can read, that's, eminently more digestible.
Sure.
And they understand it better,
Do you think that the actual the visual aid that a comic book provides, like a non-creative person that more than likely is going to be reading your material, that helps them see this as a movie or a television show much easier.
I do. Now, there are some people who might disagree with that, but I do believe that. Because, we're working in an audio-visual media. So, obviously, any visual aids help, like concept art, or whatever. I mean, I even think that, there are ways that the comic industry can evolve in some aspects by having, or I should say maybe the novel industry by having, a page of comic and a page of text, a comic page and some text. You can experiment with stuff like that. It helps visualize the whole thing. So yeah, I think it can help.
Dumb old Vic continues to throw his pennies my way. Thank you for the $1.99. He says, now who's doing the interiors? You mentioned it earlier, but can you give us the name again of the artist that's done the interiors on the book?
Elmo Bondoc.
Bondoc.
Yeah, B-O.
Put you on the spot.
Yeah, really. Yeah, B-O-D-O-C.
Okay. The Don draws stuff. He did the back cover for Wraith of God, by the way.
Okay.
Don for $5. Thank you very much, Don. He says, hey, Aaron, respect to Kevin G. Much love to Shelley, that's my wife, and well wishes. Omega Mission, God's Eye, that's Don's book, goes live 10/25 at 9 p.m. Eastern Time on Fund My Comic. Get excited. This has been a paid advertisement by Don Draws Stuff. Thank you so much for the $5, Don. Okay, so now we've talked about this, and you need to, and I know you will, get out there and get on a bunch of shows and get everybody. And at this point, we're planning on launching it here, right?
Yes, we are.
Okay, so you guys, now we'll talk a little bit more about this before we go, but this, Kevin, we've come to the point in the show that, well, I would say everybody's here for you today, but generally they come for this. So watch this in. Now, you're a writer, you're an actor, you're a producer, you're a director, you've been involved with prosthetic makeup. And so we're going to take a look at a few videos that make their way around the internet trying to convince us that Bigfoot is out there. Before I show a couple of these videos and get your comments, do you have any feelings on Bigfoot? Just in general, do you want to believe? Do you think it's just the whole thing's a joke? Do you think maybe it is real? What are your feelings?
Yeah, I'm actually writing a Bigfoot movie.
Really?
Yeah. I definitely think it's possible. One of the things that people don't realize is that the gorilla wasn't discovered until 1875. And and before that, they thought it was a myth. Now, I cannot remember his name, but there's an anthropologist who believes that Bigfoot is real and that he is, or it is, an offshoot of Gigantopithecus, and is a previously discovered North American ape that is more or less subterranean in nature, which is why we haven't seen it. And there are certain areas in the American Northwest that are so thick with foliage that we've lost planes down there, and the fires have been smothered, for whatever reason, because the foliage is so thick. So I say it is possible. I've talked to a couple of Bigfoot hunters and looked them in the eye, and I said, okay, it's kind of like the blind man who talked to Christ. Christ asked him, do you believe I can do this for you? He says, Lord, I believe. Help my unbelief. Right. So when I went to these guys, I said, okay, I want to believe. Help me to believe. Right. And it's like, some of them said things like, I've seen it 3 times. My problem is, if you've seen it once, or if you're a hunter You should always you should wear a camera. You know what I'm saying?
Yes.
That way you're sure to get it, And since they haven't, and we still haven't seen any clear pictures, that doesn't help.
No.
You know what I'm saying? At all.
I've become a brutal skeptic. I used to, when I was younger, I used to think, it's real. And then I wanted it to be real. And I sort of still do want it to be real, but I am a brutal skeptic. And considering the videos I show on this program, there's no found anything that's changing my my opinion of that. Dumb old Vic for $1.99 again says he's from the Philippines. That's all you had to say. I don't even know what that means, Vic. And then we've got Maddie Boom Boom Batty for $5. Kevin, did you find it hard not to stare at Kate Beckinsale in that skin tight outfit on the set of Underworld?
I'm married.
Yeah, there you go. That's all he has to say. We're happily married. She is she's a beautiful woman, though. That's for sure. Look at this. For Peasy says, Aaron, I did not see this coming. I had no idea. He had no idea to get a. Wait a minute. I had no idea to get a serious response. Look at him. So he's saying, Bopeasy is surprised that you had a serious response to the Bigfoot question, but you're not the only one I've ever had on here that has some belief that it may actually be real. So,
but here's why that is too. Like, look, when you're writing science fiction, when you're writing comic books for a living, it's all kind of comic book science. But you want to at least try to base it on something real, or or that really exists, so you can make your audience think a little bit. You know what I'm saying? And so, in trying to figure this out, I mean, look, people have seen something. Now, I had, this one friend who wrote this one script, and he had done research for it. He said up in your neck of the woods, and around Willow Creek, they see the creature all the time. And that the government knows the creature exists, but they don't want people flooding the area trying to find it. But my thing again is, well, if it's real, well, why not? I don't understand not getting pictures with something that big. Like, I talked to an herbologist once, and an herbologist is someone who studies reptiles. And one of the things he was saying is that he believes in, like, let's say the Yeti, but he doesn't believe it's as big as people think it is. It's probably a smaller type of snow primate, but for this thing to be as large as it is purported to be, but no one has taken a picture yet.
Well, that's my thing. You've got they finally a couple of years ago, some Japanese fishermen or research crew got pictures of a giant squid underwater. And it's like, if you can find stuff like that in the ocean, you tell me we can't find a giant ape in the woods.
Exactly.
So that's my biggest problem too, is like, where are the clear photographs? And of course, people say that Bigfoot is actually an interdimensional being, and so he's always blurry. That's why we can't get a good shot.
And you know what? And that's when it gets tied to the alien thing.
Yep.
And it's like, that's where I'm like, okay, like it brings up something else. So when we were kids, they had that episode of the $6 Million Man.
Right.
Where they tied Bigfoot to aliens. And I never knew that was a real thing, in the Bigfoot community. But my thing is, what does a hairy ape have to do with aliens? And I'm like, that's when I'm like, okay, I don't want to talk about it. You know what I'm saying? I don't want to talk about it anymore. I mean, it's kind of like the alien thing. You have, now Congress has come out and talked about it. And it's like, well, why don't you show us pictures?
I think that's all just sort of orchestrated distraction from, some of the other stuff that's going on in the politics they don't want you thinking about. But
it's not even that distracting, because
it's like, because there hasn't been any good evidence.
Yeah, you come on here, you talk serious. Well, where's the evidence? Show me some pictures at least.
Yeah, exactly.
And I heard they had this, the Mexican government brought out this this alien body, this mummified alien body.
Yeah, I saw that.
Fake is I don't know what. It's like, why do
I
you
know. I've seen better work in movies. You know, it's like, come on, man, seriously.
having student films? And I'm like, oh, brother, you know.
Green Laser here says Aaron is a brutal skeptic in self-defense, as he is secretly a shaved Bigfoot hiding within our society. And this is for you, Green.
Oh my
Oh,
goodness.
what you get? That's telling you. I'm telling you got to keep the chat in order, Kevin, or they just go wild. Okay, so let's take a look at this first video I have. This has been going around, and this may be the most entertaining Bigfoot video I'll ever see. Although, well, let's watch. That's apparently a hunter he's ripped in half. Then he falls down the hill. Okay, this is obviously CGI, but it's pretty good. It's pretty fun. I mean, so his buddy's getting ripped in half, and he's filming it, and then down he goes. So, Kevin, I think you're probably on board with me on this one. That's probably not a real video we just watched. Oh, good entertainment, though. Oh, Hellraiser. Now, see, when we start talking about Bigfoot and cryptids, people they perk up. I grew up in a rural area for $4.99. Hellraiser, thank you very much. He says I grew up in a rural area and played in the woods all the time growing up and never saw a deer, but there were deer in them. Just saying. Yeah, the people have captured photos of deers that are actually clear. So, just saying that. All right. This one here, Kevin, this is pretty entertaining. Of course, it's blurry, but I kind of dig this because this shows inventiveness here. This is apparently Bigfoot wrestling with a bear. You're not going to see this every day. Let's take a look at this. Let's see here. So there's actually movement. Here we go. All right, so Bigfoot wrestling with a bear.
Oh my goodness.
Is this like one of those Mexican wrestling movies?
It almost looks like the cosmic monster from Lost in Space. Like a different color.
This is probably from some low-budget film, too, that someone clipped and then blurred it up and said, oh, look what I caught on my hunting expedition. But yeah, so this would be something to see if you're walking through the woods and you're catching Bigfoot in a grappling match with a bear.
Right.
But I'm going man in a costume here with a trained circus bear. That's just me.
Yeah, I'm in agreement.
Eric the Guapo says that's just Kelsey and Art to Bear wrestling.
Oh man,
there's a couple of our artist friends. You probably know who Art to Bear is, though, don't you, Kevin?
Yeah.
The legendary anchor that he is. Okay, now this one I've titled "Fake Bigfoot," so I can tell you what I think about this video, but maybe you'll see it as maybe being a little bit different here. I love how we've always got these guys in the woods, and as soon as Bigfoot gets on camera, they can't seem to hold the camera sturdy.
Exactly.
Here we go. Oh, there he is, but he's shooting the ground instead of Bigfoot. What is he doing? Here we go again. So obviously there's Bigfoot there. We're slowing this way down. That looks that's definitely an image that someone put in after the fact, don't you think?
Yeah. Oh yeah. Oh my goodness. Yeah.
We see on this show, Kevin, we try to grade for effort, and I'm having a hard time finding videos that people even put a decent amount of effort into to convince me that what I'm watching is real.
Oh yeah, I know. I don't get it either.
But if you're going to fake a Bigfoot video, at least make it a good one, right? Make me want to believe. But yeah, I'm not buying this. Thank you, Frankie says, of course, haters will say it's fake.
Yeah, like there's a supposedly the biggest Loch Ness monster search going on right now, expedition, you know, where they're basically dragging the loch with sonar equipment,
Now,
trying to find out whether or not it's real or there's something down there.
did you ever watch In Search of
Yes, I
when we
did.
were kids?
Yes.
Okay. There was an episode of, I'm pretty sure it was In Search of, it might have been a Loch Ness special, but it was in the 70s.
Right.
And they did take those boats and they lined them up together and they did radar across the entire loch and didn't find anything. So they've already done that once and not found anything. So that was what killed it for me. And then, of course, the very first original photo of the Loch Ness Monster is a fake. So the whole Loch Ness Monster legend is based on a fake photograph. So
you know, and you know, but you know, once again, I don't know if you could say this is the same thing, but it's like when they said that they thought the coelacanth was extinct.
Yes, but it wasn't.
And they found the coelacanth.
Mm-hmm.
And there have been other creatures that they thought were extinct that they found.
Right.
You know, and look, you know, was there a reason why, you know, some of these prehistoric, you know, underwater creatures are all dead? I mean, we don't know. Do they need to come to the surface? I don't know. You know, there's some pretty weird things down there. But if there's one, but if there's one, there's two, there's more than one. You know, it's just
I agree. I think if we want to find some real monsters, it's down in the depths of the ocean is where we're going to find them. Angela Curry says, I appreciate that Aaron is getting Kevin's take on Bigfoot. Angela wants to believe. She's a little upset at my skepticism, I think. But someone brought this up, and this is a good point. What are your being a Hollywood guy? So maybe you have some insider information. What is your feeling on the Patterson film, the Bigfoot Patterson Gimlin film?
I mean, I've heard some different stories. You know that. You know, that Rick Baker actually created the suit. You know?
Yeah, there was the guy. There was the story that the guy that worked on Planet of the Apes, and Rick Baker was involved in it, and that they created that whole thing.
Yeah, there was another film that was done by John Landis.
Yeah,
and he had a kind of Bigfoot suit.
Schlock.
Yeah, Schlock. Yeah. There's that. But I mean, you know, if someone with enough scientific knowledge comes in and points out certain things about the way it moves, it sounds plausible.
Right.
But you know, but then they start getting into the minutia of it. You know, well, we could tell by this it's a female. How can you tell from here? You know what I'm saying?
Well, and they interviewed the guy who claimed that he wore the suit, you know?
Yeah.
So, you know, you don't know.
Ed Patterson swore that it was real on his deathbed. So it's like, I mean, I don't know. I mean, who are you going to believe? I mean, all I know is we haven't gotten a photograph yet.
Mm-hmm.
And there are these people who have seen the creature several times. And yet they have yet to get pictures. And then even the anthropologist that I told you about, let me see if I can find his name. He said something that I didn't like. And I said, that does not help the case of Bigfoot at all. He said that the population of the Sasquatch has waned because of what? Mount St. Helens. And Mount St. Helens destroyed most. And I said, you know what?
They were all camped around the base of the mountain, and you know, what are you gonna do?
Now I can't believe them.
Yeah. Well, isn't that funny? The more these guys talk, they'll always end up saying something that says, "Okay, now I can't trust anything you've said up to this point."
Yeah, exactly. Like okay, so like with the UFO thing, there's this cat named Stephen Greer, I think, or Stephen Gears, who's supposed to be the foremost authority on UFOs. He's appeared on Vlad TV, a lot, Joe Rogan show, a lot of different places. And, you know, he talks about them like he has all this knowledge in the world. And then at the end of this documentary he's into transcendental meditation. And I'm like, you told on yourself, it's like, it's, oh man.
Danky Frankie brings up a good point. He says the Sasquatch Wars wiped out a whole generation of Bigfoot. So there's that,
All right. Oh,
All right, here's my final video. Now this one's actually clear.
okay.
So we'll have to take a look at this and see what you guys think.
All right.
Here we go. There he is strolling through the woods. So right here, I give the guy credit for actually having a clear video. But this is so clearly a dude in a suit just strolling through the woods.
Yeah.
I'm not seeing anything. Now here, okay. Go with me on this. You're an actor, right? If you're doing something like this, where's the performance? Again, make me believe this is an animal and not just some dude in a suit. This guy looks like he's strolling to Walmart. You know what I mean? It's like, come on.
When we were doing Planet of the Apes, believe it or not, they had to send us to what they called ape school.
Yes, I read about that.
Yeah, where you have to mimic moving and walking like a gorilla, or a primate at least. And I'm like, oh my goodness.
But I mean, so you're getting, and you would, because the money involved in films and making them successful, you people to believe it. You want to suspend the disbelief.
Exactly.
These guys are a couple of buddies going, wouldn't it be funny if, and it's like, they're not taking that extra step and saying, I got to make this convincing and believable. And that's what really offends me, Kevin, is when they don't put the effort in.
Yeah, I think for me, I would have to, like, let's say I'm a real Bigfoot enthusiast and I've been looking for this thing. I would not take that picture from that distance. I would run up on the creature.
Yes,
I would too. I'm going to run up on it. I'm like, I want all kinds of pictures.
Yep.
And whatever happens. Yeah.
Well, you're big enough. You could probably wrestle Bigfoot. You'd be all right.
I don't know about that, but you know what? But just sheer curiosity.
Yes.
Wait a minute. I'm going to see what this thing is.
Exactly.
It's not there.
You keep getting these short, like 3 or 4 second clips. If you see something like that, man, you are filming that all day. You know what I mean? Until your battery runs out. So
exactly. You're going to post pictures, online immediately.
Evil One says, you think Kevin could take Bigfoot in a fight, which I just brought up. I think Kevin could stomp Bigfoot. So there you go. You got one guy's putting money on you.
Okay. Tell him thank you.
If you guys have the throwdown here. Okay. Yeah, that's I mean, I give him credit for giving us a clear shot, but the dude in the suit's his performance was weak. So we're gonna go thumbs down on that. All right, that about wraps the show up, but I want to talk again about your project you have coming up. We have plans right now to launch it on the 18th.
Yes.
But give me the pitch again on this comic book project you have coming up here on crowdfunding in a couple weeks.
Okay, it's called Gentara, Rise of the Jinn, and it's about a terminally ill cop that discovers she is part of an ancient race of jinn known as genies. And she discovers that she is the prophesied one that's supposed to unite all of them together. And she's being torn between, does she embrace that power or does she reject it? Because if she embraces it, that means the end of mankind. So it's one of these spiritual, action-oriented stories, and it's really, really interesting, really, really thrilling, full of a lot of heroism. It's going to be a fun ride.
All right, and this is a collection of 3 issues that have been previously published with some new material.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. And the art is done by Elmo Bondoc.
Okay. Well, that is fantastic. It sounds exciting, and Kevin's going to be making the rounds, so be keeping your eyes open because he wants to get the word out, obviously, on this project before we launch it. Sounds exciting. And you guys, that's all we've got for tonight. I want to thank you, Kevin, for taking the time to come on and talk about your career, talk about films, talk about Bigfoot and comics as well.
Thank you for having me. Thank you for having me.
And you guys in the chat, thanks for joining us. We couldn't do the show without you. I would encourage you all to please hit the like and subscribe button if you haven't. It helps the channel grow and makes me feel good about myself. So there's 2 things that you can do by hitting that like and subscribe. So keep your eyes open for us. We have Graybeards coming up on Wednesday at 1 o'clock. And then there will be no Aaron Live next week because I'll be in Houston at a con. Speaking of which, Kevin, you do a lot of cons. You got anything coming up, appearances?
Yes, I am going to be at Stellar Con in Baltimore the 5th, 6th, and 7th of 5th, 6th, 7th, and 8th of this month, and that's Stellar Con. It's in Baltimore. And
is that a sci-fi? What kind of is that? It's not a straight comic show, is it? It's like
I think it's a sci-fi horror.
Okay.
Yeah. And then I have LA Con coming up.
When's that? You know?
That's in December.
Okay.
Yeah, so I think it's let me see.
So you guys on the East Coast can go meet Kevin in person at the con in Baltimore coming up this next week. I'll be in Houston at the Bedrock City Comic Con, their inaugural Comic Con. So if you're in that area, come out and see me. And then of course, Kevin will be later in LA show in December. So if you're in the Southern California area, go out and see him there. And of course, we'll be seeing him a lot on the internet, and we'll see him back here in a couple of weeks when we're ready to launch his book. So everybody, thank you for joining us. It's been a great show, great time. Thank you for your participation in the chat, and we'll see you guys next time right here on Aaron